Yes, guys, so the US men's national team in its first friendly in almost 10 months drew 0-0 with Wales in Swansea. I'm Pete Douthit, and here on 11 Yanks Breakdown, we are going to talk about the good and the bad because there was plenty of both. So after a few hiccups on Twitter, the US men's national team released this lineup, and as soon as I saw it, I said to myself, this is not going to work. And I was right. The back four and goalkeeper was exactly as I predicted. Zack, Steffen in goal, Musah, Brooks at center back, and then Robinson and Sergino Dest at the fullback positions. The central midfield trio was also as I predicted. Adams, McKennie, and Musah. I predicted Gio Reyna on the right, which is where he was playing. On the left, instead of Uli, we saw Conrad de la Fuente. And most baffling of all, up top, Sebastian Lletget as a false 9. So let's start with what was good about the first half. We saw a very young roster come out there and be aggressive and be energetic and really want the ball and be the protagonists and be on the front foot. They were passing and moving, trying to keep possession. But ultimately, what they lacked was penetration in the final third. Why? Well, basically, they were set up to fail. So here's what went wrong. You had a three-man midfield of Musah, McKennie, and Adams. And then you had two wingers, Gio Reyna and Conrad de la Fuente, who were instructed to pinch in and join the midfield. So now you have 5 guys playing very narrow. On top of that, you have Sebastian Lletget, who's traditionally a midfielder, now playing as a false 9, who's also dropping very deep into the midfielder. So now you have 6 guys playing very central and very narrow. Not only that, because Sebastian Lletget was coming so deep, their back line could push up and compress the field even more, which made space in the center of the field very hard to come by. Now, the idea behind this is that you have Sergino Dest and Antonee Robinson taking advantage of the width to try and get forward. The problem is that Wales recognized this and they showed them inside every single time. They had their defenders defending wide and forcing them to tuck inside and make it even more congested in the middle of the park. You cannot play with a 3-man midfield and 2 wingers who are tucking inside and then a false 9 who's dropping really deep to receive the ball. It completely clogs up the field and is very, very hard to play through. And we really saw them trying. Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie were very industrious, getting stuck into challenges, trying to go forward, trying to create. But over and over again, we saw the same problem of the midfield being very congested, nobody pushing wide, and nobody stretching the back line. I don't understand this. If you're going to have a 3-man midfield, you want a forward who can make those runs in behind, and that stretches the back line and keeps them on their toes so they don't press up so high, and now you're creating more space for your midfielders. On top of that, your wide players are tucking inside. I was hoping the way that Berhalter would use Reyna and de la Fuente was to have them push high up the field and then maybe come narrow. But they're coming narrow in the midfield, making it extremely congested. It just didn't work. So at halftime, I thought to myself, I'm sure Gregg Berhalter sees the problem. I'm sure he's going to adjust. He's either going to pull Lletget off the field and put a 9 like Soto, who I originally wanted on the field, or Joaquini, or even Weah to try and stretch that back line, or he's going to instruct his wingers to stay wide and not to come so narrow in midfield, or if they're going to come narrow, wait until they're higher up the field to do it so they're not clogging passing lanes. Did Berhalter do that? No. We came out in the second half and we saw more of the same thing. Over and over again, the same situation. When our center backs had the ball, we had to funnel it inside because there was nowhere else to go. And again, Antonee Robinson and Sergino Dest weren't able to get forward as much as they wanted to because they were simply being shown inside. On the few occasions that Sergino Dest did get wide and high up the field, there was nobody to cross to because there's no striker making those darting runs in behind. It's not Sebastian Lletget. It's just not his game. It got so bad that you started seeing Weston McKennie going wide just to try to find space and playing like a winger. Finally, in the 69th minute, way too late in my opinion, Berhalter makes 2 subs. One is Johnny Cardoso for Tyler Adams. I'm guessing that was a managing minutes situation because Adams has just come back from an injury. And then he brought on Yunus for Conrad de la Fuente. Again, he didn't address the problem. Lletget was still on the field and we continued to play narrow. Kudos to Yunus though, because as soon as he got on the field, he was immediately lively and impactful. He won the ball and got a shot on target, which we had failed to do for quite some time. I said in my preview that I thought Yunus should have started on the left, and I hold by that. I don't think Conrad de la Fuente was as effective as he should be. I don't think it was completely Conrad's fault during the game because of what he was being asked to do, but you could see that Yunus instantly provided a spark that we didn't see from Conrad. Gregg Berhalter finally pulled Sebastian Lletget off in the 86th minute. Tim Weah came on, McKennie came on for Gio Reyna, and for a full 4 minutes, we had an actual forward on the field. Too little, too late from Gregg Berhalter. Now, I've been a critic of Gregg Berhalter in the past, particularly in 2019. I thought his tactical ideas were not good. I thought he overcomplicated the game. I thought he didn't know how to take advantage of the player pool. But I was willing to give him a second chance and say, okay, maybe he can adapt. Maybe he can be flexible. Fundamentally, I don't think Berhalter gets that the international game is very different than the club game, and these complex tactical systems that he tries to set up, where he tries to get his players to play these complex, tactical, fluid interchange of positions, doesn't work because you don't have time to drill the players on that with 1 or 2 days of training. International soccer is about putting your best players in your best positions, giving them basic tactical instructions that are easy to understand and easier to execute, and then letting them play their game. Gregg Berhalter thinks he's Pep Guardiola, and he's just not. And not only is it frustrating that he keeps trying to do this, but also frustrating that he doesn't seem to be learning from his mistakes. He doesn't seem to be watching the game and going, this is not working, I have to change it. Now, in the preview video, I talked about 3 things that I would be watching for. The first one was the high press. How, when, and where would we high press the ball? To be honest, during this game, we didn't really see an effective, coordinated high press, and that's not really anybody's fault. I'm not going to blame Berhalter for that. Coordinating a high press requires a lot of training and working on it together. So the fact that they weren't able to do that is not really anybody's fault. They had very limited time. I was just curious to see what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. We did see them try at times, but one of 2 things would happen. Either Wales would have a numerical superiority and were able to play out of the high press, or the high press was not coordinated enough, so 1 or 2 of the pressers arrived too late, so they could still play around it no problem. The second thing I was very curious to watch was the interchange of play. You could see the players trying to do it, but it being so congested, nobody making runs in behind, nobody going wide, nobody stretching that field, so it became very difficult for them to do anything. I want to be very clear that it is not the player's fault. Sebastian Lletget is a good player. He's a midfielder. This is not his game. To be fair, he did exactly what he was asked to do. He came deep, he held up the ball well, but he's just not a center forward. The third thing I wanted to see was how we played out of the back. Now, this was tough to tell because Wales never really high pressed us. We saw a couple of times there was a 2 or 3 man press and Zack, Steffen, and the defenders were able to play out of it no problem. There was one nervy moment where Steffen made the wrong decision. He played to Adams, who was tightly marked, instead of to John Brooks, who was free, and that almost caused us to concede, but Steffen came out and claimed the ball well. Overall, we didn't learn a whole lot about how we're playing out of the back because Wales never really pressed us. Okay, let's talk about some individual player performances. Again, I want to emphasize that I thought the whole team was very good, very eager, very hungry, very bright, trying to carry out the instructions that Berhalter gave them. Zack Steffen was mostly solid, apart from that one pass to Adams in the second half that he probably should have given to John Brooks. He made the saves he had to make, he covered up for his defense, his passing was mostly solid. Antonee Robinson had a few moments, particularly in possession of the ball, where you're like, he needs to do better than that. But Daniel Ljetget's got 13 games under Berhalter last year to show what he can do, and I think we need to show patience with Antonee Robinson. We don't have a lot of other options at left back, and I think he should start again against Panama. Both Musah and Brooks were mostly solid in defense. Both of them each had about one moment where they kind of got caught out, but other than that, they were fine. Sergino Dest. Now, Gregg Berhalter criticized Sergino Dest after the game and said he should have done more and he could have been better. I don't really understand that. I thought Sergino was one of the more standout performers. I think some of his limitations in this game were a result of the system. Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie were excellent. You could see that they're the leaders of this team, driving things forward, covering ground, making plays, trying to coordinate the press, trying to make things happen on both sides of the ball, and I was really encouraged to see both of them on the field at the same time. We haven't really ever seen that for the US men's national team. Yunus Musah started a little quietly, but he grew into the game and looks like he's going to be a solid midfielder as well. A lot of people say that Gio Reyna was quiet or not very good. You have to remember, Gio Reyna plays centrally for Dortmund, and when he gets the ball at his feet for Dortmund, he's got runners that he can hit with passes. Torgan Hazard, Rafael Guerreiro, Jadon Sancho, and most importantly, who is stretching Dortmund's back line? It's Erling Haaland. We had nobody stretching the back line here. We had nobody making diagonal runs from wide. So when Gio Reyna gets the ball, he's got nothing to do with it. Most of the time, you end up going sideways or backwards or trying to dribble through a very crowded midfield because there was nothing else he could do. You can't just look at a player's performance and say it was bad without asking yourself, why was it bad? The kind of player that Gio Reyna is he needs the players around him to move vertically. Otherwise, he can't hit them with the pass. So I'm fine with Gio Reyna's performance. He's 17 years old. It's his debut. He wasn't wasn't perfect, but again, a lot of the problems were not his fault. They were a failing of the system. Konrad de la Fuente was also pretty quiet, but again, I don't know that that's so much his fault. He had a few moments with the ball where I thought he could have done better, but again, he was being asked to tuck into a very crowded midfield. Sebastian Lletget did what he was asked to do, which was to come deep, hold up the ball, lay it off, and then try to make a run. It's just not his natural position. I thought Yanez was bright when he came on. Johnny Cardoso looks like he could be a very solid backup to Tyler Adams and do a very similar job. The other three guys didn't have much time on the field, so I'm not really going to comment too much on them. Let's talk a little bit about the Panama game. I really hope that Gregg Berhalter abandons this false 9 experiment and plays Sebastian Soto or Nicolas Gio at the 9 against Panama. I would like to see Chris Richards get some time, probably instead of Matt Miazga. He needs to start developing that partnership with John Brooks because that's what the future is going to look like. I want Antonee Robinson to start again, Sergino Dest as well. I'd like to see Uli Yanez play on the left wing with Konrad de la Fuente on the right. I'd like to see Gio Reyna in midfield with McKennie and with Adams. Maybe give Yunus Musah a break. I just think that when you give Gio Reyna 2 wingers who can make those diagonal runs and the kind of forward that will stretch the back line and try to get in behind, that's when you're going to see the best come out of him. All right, guys, that's it for now. Tell me your thoughts in the comments. I'm not going to do a preview of Panama because I've covered it all here, but I will have a Tuesday video after the Panama game, which is on Monday. Have a great weekend, guys.